Welcome to Ask Matt, a weekly video series where we talk about entrepreneurship, business, marketing, basically everything your business needs to get ahead. I'm Matt Morochek, joined by Matt Lowe. Really excited to be teaming up with Failery for this episode, so let's roll the intro and get after it. The term founder, that's given, that's earned, that's self-proclaimed. What do you think?
It's just a title. I mean, I know tons of people who, I'm sure you heard this, like the wanna-entrepreneur, right? People who just want to be, but they're, not doing anything. I think founder, people think like, oh, I actually did something. I am a founder. I'm just like all these other great founders that you know about. Treat me like one of them. I think there's that perspective. And then there's the people who just say, I'm here to sell you a product. I don't care if I'm a founder or I don't really care what my title is. I'm here to see if there's product market fit.
And what do you think about titles? They mean something, they don't, they're needed.
They used to mean something when I was like a consultant, because you work with different titles when you're trying to pitch your services. But I think once you start running your own company, the customer cares more than anything. So whatever's driving your product and marketing and sales, like that's the top priority. So that means title doesn't mean anything. The only time it really does matter is when you're really raising money, because I raised money as a CTO and it was always awkward to do it on both parties. Like the technical person trying to sell the business, sell a portion of the business. I think a CEO has to do that. What's the number one failure you see in first-time entrepreneurs when they have a product built and maybe they have a co-founder that can help out with some other tasks? What's the number one failure usually hitting them right now?
It's one that they don't realize, and it's over delegating the core responsibilities that they need to own. I hear so many times of either using Facebook ads or inside sales or somebody else to find and close that first customer, and it's not them. And there's no way that they can rely on somebody else to crack that code for them unless they've done it first.
So it's marketing, right? They don't know how to build a product. Product is so easy building. Yeah. Marketing is the hard part, trying to sell to a customer.
I was reading somewhere recently that there are more SaaS companies being started now than ever before. Like 5 years ago, it was so many thousand a year, and then now the number keeps climbing. Do you think that for non-technical founders, they should hire in, they should make it themselves, they should hire an agency to do it, they should find a freelancer? What's the best method for them to take their idea, and they can't code, and like make a website and, I don't know, start seeing if anybody cares?
First, let's eliminate some of those options. Don't hire an agency, don't hire a consultant.
Why?
Because you don't have any money to do so. And you don't have a proven idea. You don't have a product. You don't have the customer. You have nothing. Why spend money on something that has a very, very high chance of failing? So those two options are out the door. Next is you have to find a co-founder if you can't build the product yourself. Your idea must be so good, it must convince someone else to build it for you. And your value, your proposition to that person is a portion of the equity of the company.
What's one podcast that's made you a better founder or maker?
I think it's the one by Jason, which is Startup a Week. Week of Start. I don't remember what the
One Startup a Week.
One Startup a Week, something like that. It's really insightful because you get really good questions and answers from the recording. I think often it's not about what you hear in the media or TechCrunch. It's very specific, like very specific pain problems you're having at very crucial points in your business. I think hearing those is really valuable because you get to see it's like, oh, this person had the same problem too. Or here's a highly likely problem I'm about to encounter if I hit these milestones.
How do you relate to like a SendGrid or somebody similar, like their company, when you hear about the problems they had in the most recent episode that you shared with me, the CEO walked into like a $30 million company and so on and so forth. How do you relate the challenges and the stories they tell to a company like ChipBot, very much younger than that?
Well, I think the SendGrid being acquired by Twilio, it's really hard to relate. So not every podcast coming out of there is something like, hey, I can relate right now. But what you can relate is the nuances. Like here's a situation where we didn't know how to solve the problem at all. with all the resources and capital we had, investors and network, we didn't know how to solve it. I think looking at the creativity coming in them, it's the same level of creativity as they started the business. And in that interview, it wasn't a founder talking. That was a CEO came in later. But it's interesting to see that the problem solving we do right now at ChipBot is going to take about the same quality and creativity later down the road.
Is solving a problem, is that something that you can just throw money at, resources at, team members at, or how do you?
Sometimes I think it always comes down to sort of the decision maker's strategy and willingness to change that can help decide what's the best options. I think if you assume that these are my options only, you come into this sort of mindset of status quo, and you never really actually get to break things, which means if you're not breaking things, you're not actually asserting that your changes are working or not. You work with a lot of early stage companies, right, here at MHub. And what is the number one problem they all share right now? And I know, like, in a little background, I know these companies are, they have a product or a prototype. They come to you maybe to help with their website, but then they're all at that level. What's a common problem they're stuck at?
All of them want attention and a faster product development lifecycle.
They want it, but they don't want to spend the effort to do it, or they don't want to learn what the process is. Like, what's the root problem there? I
think actually the real problem is that they don't settle, or they don't spend enough time developing what a true MVP is. I think that like an MVP is literally anything that you can put in front of somebody to get feedback, which could be a blog post. And I know we've talked a lot about that before, but it's a matter of anything to get a reaction. Now, I get it, not every business is the same, but if you're working, especially on a physical product, and it takes you just a minimum, think about like a coding effort, right? You could have a website up in an hour if you really needed it to, but a 3D print takes 6 hours, and then more to print, and so on and so forth. So it's thinking about how to fail faster so that they can get more feedback. And I know we mentioned the live stream before, like just introducing new technologies to get more feedback, faster feedback, and fail or learn quicker. Mentally, how do you deal with failure?
Managing despair. I always tell everyone this, that when you first do a startup, you get this high of like excitement, opportunity. You think, maybe if you're seasoned, you know like there's going to be rough times ahead, but you still have this high of like, we're going to get this working. I think managing that is very key into managing despair, because if you can manage your excitement, well, when the bad times happen, you can flip it. You can say, here are the things that can go right. And if you actively manage that, you sort of have this equal sine wave of excitement and despair, and that's where you want to go. You don't want extremes in either direction. And when you manage despair, then your emotions get less in the way when you're trying to improve your product, when you're trying to get an MVP out, when you're trying to get your first 10 customers. You don't want emotion in the way. So what would you tell communities like MHub and 2112 on what they should really think about right now? What's a mindset change they need to have?
I would set a personal goal of how can I talk to one new person a day who doesn't know me, doesn't know my product, and maybe or maybe not has a problem that I'm trying to solve, and just talk to them. Find a way somehow. If you're in a co-working or community as well, go out and go in person if you can. Otherwise, just find any way to get feedback every single day to validate or further your understanding of it. What are 3 ways that you can fail fast over the next week or so to either better your understanding of the customer or the problem you're solving?
First, do a cold sell to a different persona at least like every week or even like every 2 weeks. Fail on that to see what the reaction is. Challenge your current assumptions right now. Second is to add things in the product that you think is valuable, but you're not totally certain. Adding that and then testing against your current early users. And by doing so, you can introduce change. Like, is it going to add more churn, or is it going to give like positive, more direct feedback through email, or if you have ChipBot, you get feedback through ChipBot. And then 3, The other way to fail fast is to start pitching to investors. If you're confident that you have something sellable, well, try to sell it then. Not just the product, but the whole idea, and see if that sticks. I think, a lot of it is more into the communication end in terms of failing fast, but that's critical because that gives much more value than you building a product and waiting for it to fail.
What kind of answers are you looking from a cold audience, from your current user base, and from an investor?
The answers are going to be wide-ranging. Oftentimes you get no. What you're trying to ask is why. So you can just predict that 90% of the time people are going to say no. Anyone who says it's a great idea, you should really maybe not give that as much value. You want to look at the no's because those will see where the boundaries are. Anyone who says yes, you don't know if they're a fan of you. You don't know if they're a fan of the industry, fan of the product. Like those all add to biases. How do you know when you need to turn down the business? Shut it down.
There's a quote that I came across recently, and it was from the Airbnb podcast on how I built this, and it's called like the trough of sorrow. And it's basically after the excitement of launch, after all your friends know and product hunt and so on and so forth, it's then that whole period about like, can I push through this difficult part? We've got people, but they're not real customers because they're too early. They're the very early adopters. So as quick as they came, they can quickly leave and exit as well. And it's that pre-product market fit, like edge curve leaning up called, I think the trough of sorrow. And it's, can you push through or not? And that's where 90% of the businesses do fail. I think to identify when you should turn it off, when you have given every ounce of effort into the company and you feel like you are not providing an A+ product experience and that your competitors are doing it tenfold better than what you are.
To add on that, it's not just the effort, it's making sure you're spending the effort to validate, can you build a scalable business by capturing 1% of the market or less?
Yeah, I think Elon Musk had a quote of that really like changed my thought of startups was, can you be 2x what the industry leader is? Because if you are not if you're not providing double the value that they are, why would anybody want to switch to your product? And that for me was like, okay, we need to create a lot of value here that our customers can see very quickly and then realize very quickly as well.